Another magnificent early just missed one of our wonderful sunsets that we have very often down here, but it's wonderful to have you all here tonight. I'd first like to thank the membership of the club for coming out en masse tonight. It truly shows a great indication of how passionate and concerned and interested you are in the future of this city. So thank you very much for coming out. We're here to have a great evening planned. I'd also like to thank Chris Manos and his staff for coming in. Dedication and attention to detail is what makes this club so special. Yeah. I'd also like to thank the candidates for taking time out to meet with this important constituency we have here in the city. I know it's difficult, campaigns coming down the wire, and but we do appreciate you showing up. Really do appreciate it. And lastly, I'd like to thank Tim Good, who put this whole night together. Tim's done this a few times.
Yeah.
And thank you for your help. I appreciate it. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Tim Will, who will act as our moderator tonight. And Tim,
Are you coming, Jim?
thank you. Thanks, Bruce.
Maybe premature, but so most of what I was going to say, Bruce has now checked off on my list. But one person he didn't thank, who I think does deserve a lot of thanks, is Rick Phillips for his help as well in coordinating tonight. Some of you, I know some of you, and if I don't recognize you tonight, I had a procedure with my eyes, so I don't have my contacts in, so I can see about this far in front of me. So if somebody waves at me or nods at me, I apologize, I'm not being rude, but I can read the cards. So one thing that I'd like to start with is to not only say thank you, but to maintain civility throughout the night. It's, a lot of people are passionate about what's happening, and the election is very important. But if you can all hold your applause until the end, that would be greatly appreciated. Or any comments, wait till the end. So for a couple of reasons, we want to get through a lot of questions tonight, so that you can hear as much as possible from the candidates and you can learn more about the candidates. You will have a chance at the end to give your applause if you'd like. The general ground rules for tonight will be, and because I don't have my contacts, I'm going to be getting very close to what I read here. So the order of the candidates were drawn by random lot this evening. So we'll start with opening statements going left to right. We'll then start with the first question to the second person, which will be Victoria. And then the closing part of the statements will be reverse order from right to left. The opening statements will be 2 minutes each. The questions, candidates will have 1.5 minutes for each question. Not all questions will go to each candidate. See how that goes. And then the closing statements are also 2 minutes. So I think that's my last. And with that, anything else?
Cell phones on.
That was, yes, if you can all, see, I can't see that. Can you all silence your telephones so that we don't have any interruptions? I think I see a hand.
Yeah, when the noise comes from the ocean, make sure they speak loudly so we can hear.
Yeah.
Good point. So if you cannot hear because of that, and I'll try and turn to both sides when I read the questions so that you can all hear. But if you can't hear, please let me know, raise your hand, and I'll try and read it again. because obviously the question or the answers will make no sense to you if you haven't heard the question. So with that, we will start with opening statements, and we'll start with Des Myers first, and we'll go right to left, and we'll go ahead and start it now. Ms. Myers?
Thank you, and thank you for hosting us all tonight. My background and experience consists of program management, 32-year career in program management, of writing and bidding contracts, services, budgets, project plans, timelines, and risk management. My specialty was implementing financial systems, and I was employed by Fortune 100 companies such as Disney, Northrop, and Toyota and Nissan. My father was a civilian police chief as well as in the military. As a leader of Preserve PVE, I successfully led the passage of the PVE Land Preservation Act into law. I will seek to further it so our parkland can never be sold without our approval. I have been a vigorous advocate of safety, fiscal responsibility, transparency, local land rights, and open space in our city for about a decade. I have gone door to door and spoken with literally thousands of you in the community to adopt your priorities as my own. They are preserve our land and rural design, keep our local police, balance the budget so we can secure our police in our years ahead, govern with full disclosure and candor, support our PVE businesses, revitalize our plazas, and increase revenue. My approach is to lend a fresh voice and viable solutions to help solve our problems collaboratively with my fellow members on council. I will build trust with residents using candor and disclosure and fact-based decisions. I will listen to residents' concerns and inform them so they can weigh in. I will be a voice of the residents. Residents need to be respected as our trusted partners. We serve the residents, and this needs to be reflected in our approach to governance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Lozey?
Hey, good evening. So I am Victoria Lozey, and I am running for re-election to, okay, there's the timer. We got the battle girl, she makes me nervous. And I'm running for re-election to the Palos Verdes Estate City Council. I'm your current mayor on the city council, former city treasurer, and that combined with a 35-year career in corporate banking, I think positions me to continue the work of the city council. My experience serving the residents for the last 5.5 years and my demonstrated leadership in the community, I think, position me for that. I am very proud of the progress that's been made during my first term, setting the discipline for long-term vision and long-term planning. I'm proud of the work that I've done to develop a long-range financial plan, which looks forward 10 years. I'm proud of the work that my participation in the Pension Ad Hoc Committee, which resulted in the adoption of a pension funding policy and the payment of over $1.7 million in incremental payments to our pension liabilities. I'm proud of the work of our Pension Ad Hoc Committee, I don't like those signs, and the focus on managing the department so that our residents in PVE will continue to enjoy the high level of police service that they've become accustomed to. I'm proud of the work I did on the search committee for our new city manager, which resulted in the hiring of an experienced manager who can develop a team of professionals to conduct the city's business. I will add that I have been the council liaison to the Beach Club for the past 4 years, and I worked to renegotiate the concession agreement, resulting in a 10-year extension with options to extend beyond that. But there's more work to be done, and I would like to do it. I'm a strong advocate for our parklands. I believe we need a master plan, not only for safety, but also for beautification and general maintenance. I called for a tree inventory and management plan, which the council agreed to fund $100,000 to get that work done in the coming year. We also need to finish development. When? Are you sure? I had that so perfectly timed. All right.
Mr. McDowell?
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank the Beach Club for hosting this event this evening. As an incumbent and former mayor, I've been actively involved in numerous civic and professional organizations, including the founding of the Palos Verdes Estates Foundation, the Los Angeles Parks Foundation, board member of the Southern California Committee for Olympic Games, Los Angeles Sports Council, and president of the Financial Executives Institute. My professional career as a forensic accountant includes more than 50 years of professional and and executive expertise. I'm a retired PricewaterhouseCoopers partner and frequently requested to provide expert testimony in federal, state, municipal, as well as governmental bodies. My experiences have taught me to fully understand all the facts, as well as the requirements and skills necessary in team collaboration while working to resolve differences. I'm the only candidate running for council, including those not running, or I'm the only candidate running for council, with a financial background that has earned the following designations: certified public accountant, certified management accountant, certified fraud examiner. I received my undergraduate accounting degree from the University of Denver and a master's business administration from the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern. My leadership skills and forward-thinking mentality have been a hallmark during my first term. I have been leading advocate in establishing the long-range economic plan. When I took office, the city had no long-range plan, depleted reserves, and no strategy to turn the situation around. In addition to my visionary thinking, I have been a strong advocate for safety and security while being concerned about maintaining the quality of life in PVE. In my spare time, I created the charitable Palos Verdes Estate Foundation that is providing incremental benefits to the city that otherwise could not have been funded. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Michael Kemps. Serving residents as a member of our city council and last year as your mayor has been a privilege, and I thank you for the opportunity. Engagement is the core function of the council member, and residents are my priority. As a community, we work together and deliver. Joint successes included completing a long-term beach club concession agreement, slowing Butcher Hills developer to pause that project, raising short-term rental fines, limiting oversized vehicles, and formally retaining our local PVE police department. The city's financial position has improved. The general fund balance increased. Pension debt was paid down $1.8 million. A pension fund policy was implemented. Labor agreements that balance compensation, retention, and pension controls were negotiated. Side letter agreements were eliminated, and staffing was stabilized. Character is critical to PVE. We face constant state threats demanding density. I've fought against the destruction of local control and worked closely with PVHA. I supported the local ballot measure. We need a statewide initiative to truly protect our city. The League of California Cities recently refused to support a proposed local control initiative. We need to join the city of Torrance and formally discontinue our membership. Meeting the city's long-term needs with balanced budgets is critical. Non-taxable and taxable revenue must be blended to satisfy long-term capital, pension, and maintenance needs. I look forward to continuing to work with the residents and colleagues to invest in a stable trajectory. Thank you all for coming tonight, and thank you for your trust.
Thank you very much. Okay, first, it's a little warm tonight, so I've invited the gentlemen to take off their coats if they want to. That's up to them. So we have the first question, and it will be for all four of you. And based upon the ground rules, Ms. Losey, you will be first to answer, and then we'll go down, and then we'll end up with Ms. Rose at the end, okay? All right, so the question has a little bit of a preface. So the question reads, on September 30th, PV High School had its first game ever under the lights for its homecoming game. By all accounts, the game went off without any issues, and the next morning, a large contingent of students walked the streets of Granada Bay to make sure any trash was picked up. Because of the amazing success of the game, the PV High School is hoping to make this an annual event to have homecoming under the lights, one game a year. So the question to the candidates is, if you are elected, will the parents and students of PV High School receive your support for having their homecoming game under the lights on an annual basis? Ms. Losey.
It's sort of a big preface for kind of a yes or no answer, right? So I feel like I should have to say more than yes. Yeah, I have 4 kids that went to PV High, and of course they were all very jealous when I told them that the game was last month was under the lights, especially the cheerleader daughter, who probably always had dreams of cheering under the lights. Yes. I think that, yes, I think that that ended up being a little bit a bigger deal than it needed to be. I mean, you know, we have a process for applying for a permit for that. And so I just would like to see the process followed, because neighbors do have a right to know that it's coming. So I feel like, you know, maybe some people in the area might have been surprised, but absolutely wholeheartedly want to do that once a year, homecoming under the lights. I think it's a terrific idea.
Very good. Mr. McGowan?
Yes, I would be supportive of an annual event of that nature as long as the process was followed properly. I had a couple of residents that contacted me the morning after, and they were quite upset because they didn't get notice until 3 o'clock that afternoon that the game was going to be under the lights. And they didn't have adequate timing in their mind to make alternative arrangements. And I think that had the process gone through where we would have had a special permit brought to the city council for a once a year homecoming or some other game under the lights, I think that the council would be very supportive of such action. I know I would.
Very good. Mr. Kent?
That was a very interesting situation, and it's an example of how council members and or mayors have to think on their feet. Unfortunately, we were given very last minute notice, and before we even barely found out that there was a desire to have the homecoming game with lights, I think we had 150 emails in our email boxes. The answer to your question is unconditionally, I would support it. I think there is a great opportunity here to learn from, and the collaboration historically with the school district and with the city sometimes is wonderful and sometimes is lacking. This time, I think it was lacking. So I actually went to the game with my wife. There were a couple of other council members that also went. So we wanted to show our support and be there. I think in the future, an opportunity to properly communicate and apply and collaborate with the city would significantly improve things and would cause much less angst.
Okay, Ms. Myers?
I support all the suggestions from my colleagues. Indeed, it's about communication where the neighbors may have one expectation and it's properly notified and included in the engagement. Here on out, it can be much smoother. I think there was a lot of benefit. I think there was a lot of benefit to the community as to how this was brought the kids into the process. They cleaned it up afterwards. That was a give back to the community as well. I love that handshake, and I love how that was all embraced with everybody included. Thank you, President.
Okay, thank you. So we'll start with Mr. McGowan with this question. And apologize. What have you done, actually for 3 of you, it is for Mr. Kentz, Ms. Losey, and Mr. McGowan. Yeah, just telling the candidates who's going to be answering this question. So the question is, what have you done personally to protect city parkland from state mandates for low-income housing? So we'll start with
Jason, can you repeat that one more time?
Yes.
A tough time.
Yeah, absolutely. You got the waves right in your ears. What have you done personally to protect city parkland from state mandates for low-income housing? And we'll start with Mr. McGowan, we'll go to Mr. Kentz, and then Ms. Lewis.
First of all, I am not aware of any threats of utilizing parklands for any low-income housing in our community. I believe that the SB 9, the SB 10, the Sacramento laws pose some serious considerations on our community, and I'm concerned about those as it relates to fire management and ingress to our community. But as far as doing anything with the parklands, I'm not in favor of doing any of that. Thank you.
Kentz?
I unconditionally support and have actively protected our parklands. The nuances here are that we have CC&Rs and the municipality of the city. That the CC&Rs need to be defended and protected, as well as collaboration between the city and Palos Verdes Homes Association to protect that. In terms of what I've done personally, beyond parkland, but into the regular residential lots, when I was mayor, SB 9 passed. I collaborated with our legal counsel and with PVHA, and initially, prior to the passage of the Local Land Act initiative, we refused to support lot splits and continued utilizing the requirement that the RJury/Palos Verdes Homes Association stamp be on building plans. I think we could stop there.
Okay, very good. Ms. Lozey?
I'm really piggybacking off of David's comment a little bit. I'm struggling to kind of validate the premise of the question because there's never been anything that talked about putting low-income housing on parklands. So when you talk about SB 9 and SB 10, I mean, SB 10 doesn't really apply in our community. SB 9, that has to do with existing lots being split into two. So for me, I have always, when I ran 4 years ago, opposed any sale of parklands. I support getting encroachments off of parklands, things like that. So I'm hearing that piece of the question. To build low-income housing on parklands, you'd have to sell it to a developer, which is against not only our municipal code, it's against the initiative passed by the PVE land preservation group, which I voted for, and it would go against our CC&R. So I'm a little baffled as to how that could happen.
Okay. This will be for all four of you, and we'll start with Mr. Kemp's and then work down this line left to left, right. Specifically, what would you do to balance the budget and eliminate the deficit that has not been done or tried before? Kemp's?
Balancing the budget, cash-based versus accrual-based accounting is what's going around in this election and being talked about. So let's raise that and let's talk about it. Standard government-based accounting includes a cash-based budget projection. And one of the suggestions that's come out in this election is that the city consider changing to an accrual-based accounting method to do so. There's a lot of nuances associated with that and complexities. I will say this, to the degree that the city creates new budget debt and or eliminates that budget debt, I support and would consider an additional item in which we look at including some portion or all of that budget debt change in our, what in private business we call profit and loss statements. I think the key to that, though, is to recognize that regardless, that idea would cost and cause new revenue to be created in our city to do so.
Okay. Ms. Myers?
We've been running our city on debt. Our high interest, 7%, is costing $1 to $2 million, going up to $2 million, which has diverted critical funding away from infrastructure. Our balance sheet net value has diminished from 88 million to 50 million. Our capital reserves are almost gone. The city has stated that we will have cash deficits starting next year, even though we had $3 million in additional funds unexpected for COVID relief. This will cause us to burn through our general reserves. Measure E kicked the can down the road, which has worsened in the last 4 years. The city has increased future spending commitments. However, we don't have the funds to uphold those. We don't run our households this way. I have 5 steps. 1, create an accrual-based budget that includes all costs. So we look in the long term when we make decisions and our budget starts looking like our balance sheet. Instead of having 2 truths, we have 1. Implement operational efficiencies and line item budget review to reduce costs. Implement non-tax revenue increases. Implement real pension policy that prevents new debt and pays off existing debt. Communicate and collaborate with residents. So if there are still revenue gaps, give them choices and hear what they want. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lozey?
I hate to go right in front of the CPA, so I'm sure they'll have a lot more technical responses. So I try to actually stay fairly firmly on the high road and not get too wrapped into these, into some of these things. But this concept of not having a balanced budget for the last 4 years since we've been in office is just false. And so we have had, so balanced budget means that when you plan your budget, your revenues equal your expenses. Hopefully your revenues are a little more than your expenses. So so we have had, not only have we developed a balanced budget every year and adopted a balanced budget, at the end of the year, the results have produced a surplus, several $1 million. That's how we pay for things like when we say we want to put another $1.8 million toward pension, that's where that comes from the budget surplus. When we say we want to put $1 million into our capital improvement plan, that's where that comes from. So there's a lot of concepts here that are mixed that don't make sense to mix. So an accrual-based budget, why would you want your budget to look like a balance sheet? That doesn't make sense. Now, I think there are good points raised about our declining are declining that position, which has to do mainly with depreciation, that we're not paying enough to reinvest in our capital. And secondly, because of our pension. And I know that little science bucks go up. But so for me, this is a frustrating noise around this campaign because there's too many concepts that have been intertwined that don't make sense to intertwine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGowan.
I will fully agree that going to an accrual type of an accounting system in a municipality of ours doesn't make any practical sense from my perspective. But really, the answer to this question in my mind really has to go back to a long-range plan and a vision. We've been working for the last 3 or 4 years to put together our long-range plan, and we have yet to complete that process. We have a lot of deferred maintenance in our community, whether it be from infrastructure, whether it be health and safety issues, or whether it even be simple things such as zoning. And we need to better understand and wrap up the long-range planning process that we have already begun upon. And then as far as raising incremental revenue, we're going to have to go back and look at what the various needs are within the community. One of the things that we do have Measure E expiring in 2027, and I personally would like to see us look at retiring that earlier and do something that will provide us a cost of living increase to help offset some of the inflationary pressures that we're all experiencing today. Thank you.
All right, this will be just for you, Mr. McGowan. And the question is, what do you envision for Malaga Cove Plaza? I have heard of possible hotels, more restaurants, less realtors. Also, please explain AECom's role.
Okay, first of all, there's a lot of false allegations, and you just read off 2 or 3 of them to begin with. The foundation, through some residents, were asked to fund a project to look at the health and safety, or not the health, but the safety and security of our City Hall complex. As I think many of you are aware, it is riddled with all sorts of deferred maintenance issues. We've got some seismic issues that have not been dealt with. We've got ADA problems. We've got some roof problems and so forth. So the gift that the foundation wanted to put to the city was to give them an analysis, an economic study as to what is going to require to get that building repaired and up to code, or if it is going to be too costly for that, what might be some alternatives that could be used on that particular property. There is nothing that's ever been said about any kind of low-income housing, commercial development, or everything, any other potential strategy. It's strictly an economic analysis study to help provide viable options so that the city and the council can evaluate those options to take it to the residents and say, here's our situation and how are we going to deal with it.
Thank you. All right, this will be for Mr. Kemps and Ms. Myers. The question is, when did you shift from supporting the sheriff option to supporting our Palos Verdes Estates Police Department? What would cause you to change your position and support the sheriff option? Mr. Kemps.
Goes to Des first.
Would you mind repeating that this way, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
When did you shift from supporting the sheriff option to supporting our Palos Verdes Estates Police Department? What would cause you to change your position and support the sheriff option? And we'll start with Ms. Martin. Sorry.
That question is based on a false premise. If you look back at the recording, and I show it on my website, desforpve.com, what you'll see under police is a recording that I said that night on January 10th, 2018, when the council was deciding whether or not to vote for Measure E. And what you'll hear me say is I fully support the police and keeping the police, that this measure, since it doesn't fully fund the police, then our infrastructure will be coming out of our infrastructure money. We'll be running our city on debt, and everything I predicted that night has come true. The city has officially said on multiple times, they expect to start cash deficits next year. This is very serious. We should have been avoiding this for the last 4 years. But what I predicted that night in 2018, I said, this is a management leadership issue. But I fully support keeping the police and keeping them in place. But we run our city into the ground. We can't say we balance the budget, we have all these surpluses, and yet we have cash deficits starting next year. Those two don't come together. We've got to make decisions that are long-term decisions that make us viable and come together with that transparency and understand it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kemp?
I've always supported our police department. The sheriff option was never on the table for me. I'm not sure why the question was even posed. In terms of what it would take to get me to change my opinion, we represent our residents. I believe that a massive majority of our residents want to retain our local police department. That would have to flip, and a massive majority of our residents would have to not want that for me to consider that opinion.
Thank you. All right, this is for all four, and if I'm right, we're starting Ms. Losey. Okay. What is to be done regarding traffic at Via Corta and PD Drive West? Expensive traffic officers failed roundabout traffic signal. Number one.
Geez, in a minute and a half. Okay. All right. So, oh boy, the accord. Okay. So I do happen to believe that there is an issue there, and I have to talk really fast. It's only a minute and a half. So, maybe what I'll say is what I think I've learned in hindsight, which is always 20/20, is that we should, what I think we're missing is that not all residents, or not a majority, acknowledge that there's a problem there. And so therefore, if people don't acknowledge there's a problem, then no solution is going to be, I mean, why would you want a solution if you don't believe there's a problem? So I think what we have to do, we got to go back to the drawing board. We have to look at that whole corridor holistically from Via Corta also to the flag triangle. We bifurcated that before, and what we should have done is had one solution, and we could have bifurcated the construction, but we need to have a holistic solution and go back. Probably a community, I'm thinking a community committee of not just traffic safety members, but from people from from the different neighborhoods. And to really kind of get back in and come together and define that there's a problem or not, and then agree to a solution. And I think that's how we have to move forward.
Thank you. McGowan?
Well, I'll pick up where Ms. Losey left off on the bifurcation was a mistake that we the council made. If you go back in history, the Via Corta intersection and the triangle were being studied long before the three of us became members of the council. And it was continually a work in process issue. It was, the residents may not have been following what was going on at city council, but it was openly discussed for 3 or 4 years prior to this last year. We made a mistake, a couple of things. One was bifurcation. 2, our communication problems were travesty. And the communication is a direct result of our tightening our budget too tight. And we got rid of the quarterly newsletter, and we weren't communicating with the residents the way we should have been. I agree that we need to go back and look at it holistically from the ground floor up, because I don't believe the current situation with having officers in the intersection is the kind of risk that our community needs to take on. I'm very much concerned during the winter months that we will not have an ability to have someone out there, and the risk of a human being in that intersection is more than our residents deserve. Thank you.
Yes.
I think the challenge was that initially, and this precedes us, but we own it. I think the challenge was that our public works department, through a couple of directors, made the assumption, because of the budget challenges in the city, that the residents would want, is that loud enough? That the residents would want to utilize county funding as a prerequisite. And because the county funding would only allow a couple of options, because the intersection had to be improved to a certain level to spend that money, that restricted the options to a full-fledged traffic light and a 2-lane roundabout. And the residents looked at that and said, yeah, no, we don't want that. What inverts what we want is we want you to look at the intersection bottom up, from minimal impact to major, not major to minor, and actually consider incremental and minor improvements and forget utilizing the county money to do so because we want our intersection protected.
All right, Ms. Myers?
Yes, the bifurcation actually, in my observation, was an issue that was created by the engineers. That was a violation of the environmental laws, and the engineers should not have steered our council in that direction. I am glad after looking at those contracts and what they were doing, that there is further review on using that particular contract, that the consultant. I think the bigger problem, and I sat through these laborious meetings year after year, our council was being transparent. I give them full credit to that. But they made the decision to go with this well before they had documented they were going to make the decision. They made the decision a month and a half before they told the residents they would. And people were very shocked in the beginning of March when the decision was made. They weren't included. They didn't know about it. So they didn't even attend that meeting. So they were shocked about it. And then people started to really push back, really push back. The more people that heard about it, the more they were pushing back. I knew this. I was going door to door getting signatures for the Land Preservation Act, and people were just really upset about it. So I did communicate, listen, this is not working for people. This is a big issue. And council was not ready to let go of it. And so it became a huge issue. And they received a petition with 675 signatures by the time they had the meeting, and I called it pitchfork meeting, where people were literally screaming in the month of August. They did hear the residents. That's good. And in the end, I think taking an incremental approach is a good idea. Thank you.
All right, thank you. This question is to you, Ms. Myers. How do you plan on working collaboratively with our PVE city employees, especially those in our police department, since there's an impression, and I'm just reading the questions, that you've had a negative impact on them over the past 5 years?
Well, the presumption, once again, on that question is that I had a negative impact, or whether or not it's perception. I'd be happy to show anybody here that would like to see it, an exchange with the police union president, Aaron Delda, asking to meet with him and any of the other people to go over my platform and ask any questions. This was before the big smear campaign started. And he said, yes, we would welcome meeting with you. Again, I will make all these texts public. And so we were going to meet. I said, just as long as it's transparent. All of a sudden, communication stopped. 24 hours later, I was told there will be no more communication. Now understand, as a candidate, I can't meet with a special interest group that could potentially ask me for future promises in exchange for an endorsement. That's just not right. And I've upheld that commitment to the community. All transparency is vitally important. I fully support the police department. I don't think the union is behaving well, and I don't think that people actually like it. But it is what it is, and we all have to be adults. And if one is elected, you have to serve with grace and honor. And that means serving the community, serving the various police officers with that grace and honor. And hopefully that sets the pace for them to exchange it as well. But I am committed to that. Thank you for asking.
Thank you. All right, this is for Mr. Kent's, Ms. Losey, and Mr. McGowan. And I think I'm starting with Mr. McGowan, maybe?
Yes, you're right.
There's been a lot of negative campaigning. Do you support these tactics or condemn them?
I do not enjoy the negative campaigning that is going on there, without a doubt. But I believe the negative campaign largely rests with false accusations and statements being made that have no foundational basis, at least as it relates to the Kalispberg Estates Foundation and any studies that the foundation has been gifting to the community. The smear campaign, I will use that word since it's already been brought on the table, to allege that there's going to be low-income housing or an 8-story property built in Malaga Cove is so ridiculous and ludicrous that it doesn't warrant comment. Thank you.
All right. So Mr. Kent, can you call the question?
I do.
Okay.
I think we have to keep our sense of humor about us, and I think we have to realize that this is a political election. And the key thing that I think we have to remember is this will be a short period that we need to focus on pulling together and coming together. Some may have noticed that I had a funny card drop in the mail today. And let me just say in front of that.
Disgusting. And
Okay, hold on.
Whoa. Hey.
We're gonna keep it civil, understand it. Emotions can run high. Let's just keep it civil, and Mr. Kemps, please continue.
The claim that that card is sexist is insulting, and it isn't. We'll move on from that. I think that we need to focus on the fact that we need to keep our senses of humor. I think we need to get through this election, and the most important question that needs to be asked, and I'll answer it, is regardless of who wins the election, are the candidates that are presently here committed to working with each other to focus on and work on our city's challenges and problems? My answer to that question is unconditionally yes.
Thank you. Ms. Lozey?
So the actual question was, do you like the
Sorry.
smear? Do you like smear campaigns? I forget what the actual question is.
question too. I know I answered.
There's been a lot of negative campaign. Do you support these tactics
Oh,
or
no.
condemn them?
So as I mentioned before, I just kind of like to stay on the high road and kind of, have my mention, have my message and say what I have to say. And, my observation is there's plenty of smearing going in all directions. So, I think it's the nature of a campaign, and I think I kind of agree. You have to kind of understand that this is a short period of time, and then starting on November 9th, you have to be committed to work. I always feel that the voters are going to tell me who they want me to work with, or if they want me working here at all. And so, my job is to work with who they tell me to work with, and it's starting on November 9th. All the rest is water under the bridge, and work with who the voters have asked you to work with.
Okay, thank you. All right, this is for all four, and if I'm right, I'm going to Mr. Kemp's first. Thank you. Sewers and beaches. Number one, sewage overflow 7 weeks ago resulted in 3 weeks beach closure. These are handwritten, so I'm trying to. 2, Rat Beach received B grade early this week. And 3, county sewer trucks are constantly in PD. What is up?
What is up? Let's separate two things. The city has a portion of sewer line that it is responsible for. The county has a portion of sewer line that it is responsible for. What is critical, and this goes to staff turnover and is not an excuse of any kind. What is critical is that our city staff and the county communicate effectively, and that our staff changes don't require that those relationships be rebuilt. The sewer line that was involved in the Rat Beach closure was a county line. They did address the problem. I think that we need a greater inspection and understanding of those that we are responsible for as a city. And by the way, when those are upgraded to a certain size, the responsibility for those is transitioned to the county. So we need to understand the financial impact of that and have a progressive timeline in which we address those, and also improve our communications with the county so that we are responsive in a timely manner.
Okay, very good. Ms. Myers?
I agree with everything Councilmember Kemp just said. And just to be clear, when we upgrade to a different size sewer line, then they take over the responsibility. And once we've upgraded all of them, they own the whole thing and we don't have to pay for it anymore. But I am glad he brought up the challenge we've had with staff retention. This is something that started in 2019. And I put the recordings on my city site. And it's been quite a problem for the city. And I think we need to take a closer look at what's causing the staff turnover. So we've even had additional staff turnover recently, the police chief and a planner. I'm going to take a close look at what's causing that. We have 2 different reports from police experts in the past, the 2015 Heining report and the McCrary report from 2017. These are great solutions on how to retain staff in long term, in the short term. And I think we need to dust all these reports off that we have from the consultants and start solving these problems. That staff turnover has been huge. Another thing is that we don't have digitized records. And because we don't have digitized records, there's no need to search for records. We need to digitize our documentation up to the 1990s at least. And And so it's searchable. We couldn't even find a zoning report, a zoning map for the city. So I think there's great opportunities to save money by putting through efficiencies and also linking back with those employees and understanding what the issues are. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lozey?
Okay, so back to sewers. So I actually, the observation of whoever sent in that question, actually, I've had the same observation. All of a sudden, the LA County sewer trucks are around a lot more. And so we do, Councilwoman Kemps is right, there's a portion that the city's responsible for, and there's a portion that the county's responsible for. And we're very focused on our portion, of course, naturally. And we talk about, that's when we talk about capital planning and the capital spending we do every year, it's maintaining our infrastructure, our sewers, and our streets. So we're very focused on our piece, and you will see in our capital plan that we talk about having really a sewer master plan. You know, you got to get a camera in there and look and see what we've got. But what has popped into my head recently is that I think we need to go back and be equally focused on how to keep LA County accountable for their work, because I think our tendency has been to say, oh, that's the county, they'll take care of it. I'm like, oh, okay, that's fine. Unless they're on your street every week, that's not good. So that to me has kind of moved to the top of my list of kind of little red flares going off on the side of my brain saying, you know, we need to sit down with the county and understand why I mean, I know why their lines are going bad. They've got tree trunks in them and they've got, you know, all kinds of stuff in it. But yeah, I think we need to refocus our priority on that.
Thank you. Miguel?
Okay, let me start off by saying I sit on the board of the LA County Sanitation District, and I'm going to differentiate. There's a difference between the sanitation district and the county that maintains the sewer lines. The situation that we had here that caused the closure of Rat Beach had to do with some resident, I don't even know who, this is what I was informed of, that was cleaning out their lines, and they pushed a lot of the roots and so forth into the main sewer line, and we had a rainstorm shortly thereafter. And it caused the backup and the overflow that went into down into Rat Beach into Malaga Creek. And the sanitation district was on site within hours after this situation took place, and they remediated it very quickly. The reason the beach was closed for 2 or 3 weeks was not the sanitation district, it was not the county, but it was our health department. It was the LA County Health Department that was monitoring the orgasms or whatever they monitor regarding the closure of the beach, and they kept it closed for a couple of 3 weeks, and they're still having a difficult time getting accurate readings. But it doesn't, it may be somewhat related to the initial situation, but that situation was actually caused by one of our residents who didn't properly have their sewers cleaned out.
Okay. Thank you. All right, next question is to Ms. Myers.
Okay.
If you have always supported the police, why is the police association actively campaigning against you?
I think that they are best to answer that. First, why didn't they want to meet? I still would like to meet. And I think that that's really important that we understand why they have that concern. I did meet for 2 hours with the police chief. It went quite well. Christine was there as well. And one of the things I asked him what he thought. And he said, well, whenever you talk about financials, you sound like they perceive it as anti-police. In other words, you talk about pensions, they see it as an anti-thing. And I said, but why? I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about how to solve the problem and that it is a problem. And he said, well, you're the only one that's saying it's a problem. I said, but we're not going to be able to pay their pensions unless we deal with that. He said, so from now on, when you talk about the police or the financials, say at the end, you support the police so they don't have that perception. And I thanked him very much for his advice. And so from now on, when I talk about pensions and financials and how we're going to make it all work, I will add on, I support the police. Thank you for asking.
Thank you. All right, this is for all four. And I think I am starting with Ms. Myers. All right. As you all know, the annual parcel tax funds that were allowed pursuant to the passage of Measure E are scheduled to expire after the 2026-27 fiscal year. That would result in a drop of the city's revenue by approximately $5.5 million, funds that are dedicated to locally controlled law enforcement services. With the expiration of the parcel tax fast approaching, what specific steps would you take now, if elected to the city council, to address this $5.5 million drop in the city's future revenue?
Thank you for asking. And actually, I went step by step on my website, devs4pve.com. If you look under financials, I lay it out. The fact is, we should have used the last 4 years to actually move us a bit closer, because that's why we're 1 year away from cash deficits. Residents need to know what this means. We don't have a solution in place, and we're further from it now than 4 years ago. What we need to do right away is start meeting on this issue and moving it forward. We have a huge gap, and we have another gap with our infrastructure. And all of this needs to be talked about, and we need to move those decisions along. Thank you.
Ms. Lozey?
So I think the most important tool, and the tool that the three of us have spent the last 4 years designing, is the long-range financial plan. And the point of the long-range financial plan is to be able to demonstrate to residents, here's what our revenue stream is, and here's revenue growth going out for 10 years. Here's what our normal operating expense growth is and what that looks like going out for 10 years. And then here are the other priorities, and never mind the unexpected things that pop up, but the other priorities that we've set of tackling our unfunded pension liability, bringing our parklands and open space up to snuff, and prioritizing our capital improvement plan and coming up with a funding strategy or funding policy for that too, so that we're putting money away. So I think residents are smart people in this town, and I think you can set that down and show them and say, here's the trends, here's where it's going, here's where the $5 million plugged the hole, but that was really probably a short-term solution for a long-term problem. And we probably really have to have open communication with residents to say, here's the picture. So we either need to fund the gap or cut things that we think we don't need. And I tell you that we have cut. So I don't know what that would be at this point. But anyway, I think that the number one tool and number one accomplishment of this council in the last 4 years is that long-range financial plan. And that's the communication tool for going forward when we need to redo Measure E.
Thank you. Mr. McGowan?
Well, I agree with Mayor Lozey about the long-range plan is a critical component to this. And we have to get all of our needs identified. And as I indicated earlier, our city hall has some real safety issues that have to be addressed sooner rather than later. When you look at Measure E, which is the parcel tax that's tied to the police department, if the city does not have that resource, that $5 million set of resources, we're in serious trouble. We cannot afford not to go back through another Measure D failure. Therefore, I firmly believe that we've got to accelerate the analysis of our long-range plan, looking at all of the needs, not only infrastructure, but also fire mitigation and some of the parkland issues that are all tied together. And we need to sit down and educate, work with our residents. And I firmly believe we ought to be considering a retirement of Measure E in November of 24 and replacing it with another parcel tax that is more appropriate for the needs of our community, but also, and most importantly, includes a COLA feature, a cost of living increase. Because right now, every day that goes by, that $5 million Measure E is worth less and less in the spending of our community. Thank you.
Mr. Katz?
I think we have to look at the history. And when we go back and look at what happened with Measure E, and this is not to place any blame, it's to look forward. I think the key thing that was missed, and I understand that we came out of Measure D's failure and we had to quote unquote, plug the gap. But plugging that gap and the way that it was done had absolutely no escalation in that number. And so here we are, we've been fortunate sort of up to this point. We've had low inflation, and we've been able to cut expenses and somehow create cash surpluses and pay down debt. As everyone's noted here, that's not going to continue because the inflation numbers are going to continue to be a problem. We have to face the fact as a community that what we want and what we utilize, we need to pay for. Certainly, we need to address some of this with non-tax revenue and discuss and weigh with the residents those options. Do we want paid parking? You know, some residents absolutely despise filming in our city, even though it brings in revenue. So if we want to enjoy the level of the quality of life and how we're living in PVE, we need to pay for it and fund it. And it's our job to educate you and bring you up to speed, but then also get your feedback and your opinions as to how that should go.
All right, thank you. I think Mr. McGowan and Mr. Kemps have kind of answered this question just now, so I'll address this to Ms. Myers and Ms. Lozey. Do you support additional taxes to support our PVE police?
I support whatever the residents want. We're here to serve and we work with them. What we need to do though, before we can get to that point, is we need to prove that we manage money well. And that's not what we did with Measure E. There was a secret meeting, it's on the city site, that was planned on April 11th, 2015 to tax stack people after they got Measure E through. That's not appropriate. You need to tell people the whole truth and treat them like adults. The same thing happened with Measure E. Everybody knew it wasn't enough money and they were going to have to come back. People deserve the whole truth. So going back to what do we do? It goes back to, let's start with operational efficiencies. Well, the fact is that we have extra money because our staff quit. And now they're filling those positions. If you listen to the recording of the city manager at the budget meeting, he said, we're not going to have that anymore because we're going to fully fill all these positions this year. And then that's why we're going to have the deficits that we're going to have. The other reason we had the extra cash is the one-time influx of the $3 million from COVID. We need to plan ahead. These are problems. So the first thing we do, operational efficiencies. We don't need 200K plus compensated directors over 3 employees in the planning department. We need more people doing the work of the planning and less people watching it. I put a number of other suggestions on my website about how we can start saving money and managing it better to also improve our reputation. But we manage money better, we got to come back to it.
Thank you. Ms. Lozey?
So was the question back to the
Do you
redoing
support-
Measure E?
Do you support raising taxes for?
It's kind of the same
to
as the question
support our
before, right?
PVE,
Yeah.
it was.
Oh, to support the police. Well,
Yeah.
well, of course, back when it was Measure E, of course, I famously said the Measure E should have been the entire cost of the police department. But yeah, I mean, I think I answered that already when I talked about that, you know, showing and kind of piggybacking off of Ms. Myers is you have to show the residents the whole picture. We have, you know, the residents have tasked, kind of directly to that question, the residents have tasked us with hanging on to that police department and funding it. And that is what we're going to do. So that, you know, we've got to pay for it. We have to show residents what the entire picture is. I mean, so I don't know, you know, the tax tied to the police department, you know, I think it's tied to the whole picture, probably. Yeah, that's really how I look at it.
Okay, thank you. So this is for all 4 of you, and I think the first is Lozey. Does the city have any plans to get an alternative study for City Hall and the acres around it being studied for development? Or will the PVE Foundation study be the sole source of decision making? Ms. Lozey?
Did you want
You
to
not
say
hear
this?
Sure. Does the city have any plans to get an alternate study for City Hall and the acres around it being studied for development? Or will the PVE Foundation's study be the sole source of decision making?
So there's no, first of all, I mean, I don't know if it's implied in there. I mean, there's no secret study, there's no secret back room, anything. Nobody's doing anything. I mean, we know we have a building with the problem. We have an organization that said, hey, we'll fund a study if you want us to hire somebody to tell you, you know, here's kind of a basic use. Here's, you know, here's if you really wanted to do something cool. I mean, I don't know what they're going to come back with. So I think we are so far from, and I know Councilmember McGowan will be happy about this, but I mean, I think we are so far from really doing anything with that City Hall. Yes, There will be studies upon studies. There will be community meetings upon community meetings. Any change to that building is a huge change to our city. So of course, we're gonna have community meetings. Personally, I think, as I say a lot, the city hall needs more than a coat of paint and less than the Taj Mahal. So somewhere in the middle there, we have to develop a decent place to work because you're all business people. It's hard to recruit people right now. We bring them into that building and it's a horrible place to work. So who's gonna work there? And then we have our police and fire are downstairs and they need a new facility. And so we need to look at a practical solution for the way we work and the way we deliver services to the city. So yes, there will be studies upon studies for that.
Thank you. Mr. McGowan?
Well, first of all, the study that AECom is currently undertaking is an economic analysis. It is not a study to design a building or to tell you what it's going to be A, B, C, or D. It's looking at the economic viability of what is facing our city. Number one, the building currently exists, and Victoria just alluded to it, has a number of serious considerations. It's not up to code. And anytime we do the first bit of work on that building, we're going to have to bring the whole thing up to code at once. It's a 65-year-old building. The building does not adequately house our fire department. They can't get the current version of the fire trucks into that garage. It has also got seismic problems that if we have another shake, rattle, and boom, and that building were to collapse or some part of it, your police and fire all go out at the same time. And therefore, the foundations aspect was to help the city look at economic needs of what that building is going to require and say if it's going to be more costly and if we needed to build a public safety building, what are the economic options available? But it's strictly from an economic perspective for a variety of considerations. There's no set plan anywhere, and it's a long way from having a resolution.
Thank you. Mr. Kent?
Let's provide some value by adding a couple of things rather than repeating. Number one, for those that don't know, LA County is on the hook in their agreement with the city when the city outsourced fire and took away its own police department and went to the county. There is a schedule in that agreement, I believe, for 2040 with a scaling down percentage starting with 80% currently that the county is committed to having to pay for to replace their fire station. So that certainly would have to come into this analysis.
It does.
Number two, AECom, other vendors. Personally, as an individual council member, I would never accept either A, only one vendor, B, I would never ever vote for supporting one vendor doing development that made recommendations. And number three, I do think that when those suggestions come forward, not only do the residents need to be involved, but we need an alternative analysis to go along with it so that the residents have something to compare and contrast with.
Thank you. Ms. Myers?
I've seen the actual document that was created for the study that includes acres of open space around City Hall that's being studied by the PVE Foundation, who hired AECom to do the study. I think those kind of studies should be done by the city, not private parties. I also believe that the ad hoc committee, which consists of 2 people on council, that meet with AECom, should allow the residents to also attend these meetings. This is what people mean when they say secret meetings. We're talking about a massive development project. So what is in those documents? And these are the actual documents that came from the city. These documents include housing on public land, rental and sales. It includes a boutique hotel and other commercial ventures. Listen, this may be just a great idea. Fantastic. But why can't we have open door meetings? Why aren't we disclosing this? This is not a smear campaign. These are exactly the kind of conversations we should have. A smear campaign is when you attack somebody's personal character. That's very different. So what we need to do is release these documents, open the door, allow the residents to attend these meetings, and start making these documents open and disclosable. This is a very controversial project, and there should be somebody else looking at it. There was another resident that's an engineer that asked to be that ultimate study. He did not even get a response from council. I think that's worthy of a response. Thank you.
Thank you. This is for all four. We'll start with Mr. McGowan. Please give 2 ideas on how to increase city revenue.
I think there are a couple of ideas that we can look at in increasing city revenue. There's obviously some, low hanging fruit or lower hanging fruits such as parking and increasing fees and so forth. But that's not going to provide any substantial substance to meet the needs of this community. We're going to have to be looking at possibly franchise taxes, possibly utility taxes. We may need to look at other revenue sources depending upon the nature of the investment that needs to be made. If, for hypothetical sake, that we need to do a building or a major renovation that we don't have the cash for because it needs to be done short term, we may have to even consider bonding. But I think these are all items that have to be evaluated when we know what the needs that are going to come out of the long range plan, what those specific investments need to be for, and then we can address the funding for those particular investments individually.
Thank you, Mr. Kemp.
Number 1, parking study on high traffic areas, the plazas, Bluff Cove, the Sunset visitors. We need the visitors that are enjoying sharing our city with us to help contribute to the cost. Number 2, fee schedule, ensuring that construction and other fees are updated, are current, and are actually covering the real cost of the departments. Number 4, you ever notice the number of people that visit the Mallory Cove Farnham Martin fountain and how frequently they arrive and they take pictures? The city should be deriving some form of fees from those visits. Utilities are mentioned. Here's one that's out of the box. You have to have some feedback on this. Maybe you can give a reaction. With all the conversation we've had about La Venta, and I'll stop there because of the Brown Act, one thing that might be considered is that the residents apply fees and or taxes to businesses of that kind. So that for the time and energy and investment that the council, its lawyers, and the residents are investing in trying to solve that challenge, not just targeted at that business, but also golf club and others, potentially there's a user's tax or something to that effect that actually benefits and comes to the city.
Thank you. Smart.
Great suggestions from Councilmember Kemp. He took the ones I wrote down and the ones that are on my website. And I'm just going to elaborate on one of the ones he brought in, just to make sure it's clear. When people do development, their personal development projects in your city, what's happening right now is that we're supplementing those costs. And when I say we're supplementing those costs, all those fees that they're being charged should cover the full cost. But I'll go even further. They look at it from a cash basis. They should be covering the pension costs as well. So we do not supplement the development in our city. They should be paying for the whole thing. I agree with the parking 100%. I think it might even help with some of our congestion. If you look at Del Cerro, they have their parking underground, and so you don't have that light of the posts and such. I'd also like to revitalize the plazas. I've been doing a lot of canvassing in Belmonte, a lot of young families. And they said, we want gathering places. And I'm very much in favor of this, so that we have events, especially in Malga Cove Plaza, where we can have wine and cheese events for adults. We have different things for the kids. We have yogurt shops. People want to gather and they want to get together more and have those events. And I also would like to see specialty shops, just different places we can all get together. It is a wonderful community. And people really, really like each other and love the community a lot. And I think we can grow on that. I think we kind of let it go a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Loza?
So, it's important, of course, to recognize that we, the city, don't own the shops in those buildings in Malaga Cove Plaza. For example, we own the parking lot, but we don't own the shop. So we actually can't dictate what goes in there. And that's been a huge challenge. So I probably disagree a little bit on the parking side. So I think we need ideas that actually move the needle. I mean, we have a $20 million budget. So, you know, paid parking along the bluffs is such a can of worms. And it would be kind of an inconvenience for people. We talked about kind of balancing convenience, inconvenience. You know, things on a $20 million budget that might be $25,000 in revenue. I think you need something that has a little more impact and less, and is less intrusive. I do totally agree with updating the fee schedule. We do that periodically, but I think it's been a couple of years, probably since before COVID. But we do need to get more you know, we have so many real estate. I'm like, oh no, I'm trying to look around, figure out how many real estate brokers are in the room. But we have so many, you know, Malibu Plaza is all real estate brokers, and they're making a lot of money buying and selling the houses in this town, and we need to make a cut of that. And so my understanding is right next to the LA County sewer, is this my next red flare idea, is that some of the other cities do tax the commissions on their real estate brokers.
Thank you very much. All right, this will be the last question, and then we'll go into closing statements. This is for all four of you, and remind me Mr. Kentz will be first. What would be your top two priorities if elected?
I'm going to go for the top one first. Communication. I think the combination of the COVID period and being on Zoom, the lessons learned around the roundabout, the vehicle at an intersection, and some of the cost cutting that was done early in our tenure, slowing down and stopping newsletters. I think communication is job one, because almost everything else we've talked about tonight requires communication. The city manager recently added an analyst. That person is to be focused on collaborating on communication. There is a definite recognizable gap between the community and City Hall that has increased and needs to be resolved. Related to that, and I keep pushing for this at the council level, I think people got used to being on Zoom. They want to be able to jump on in their living room. They want a hybrid solution to be able to see us and work with us and not be isolated and sit on church benches. And so I think we need a technology solution. It doesn't have to be ridiculously expensive, and we have to attack that.
Thank you. Ms. Myers?
Did you say two?
Yes.
Okay. Number one is building the trust with the community. I think that was lost on a number of events that have happened. Whether it's Measure E not fully funding the police department, whether it's the roundabout, those things just happen. And you just got to own it and just realize to build that trust, to take anywhere, financially, keeping the police, everything, you've got to start with that trust. And to Michael Kentz's point, part of that's communication, but it's more than communication. It's not just talking at them. It's actually giving them a seat at the table and saying, these meetings won't be behind closed doors anymore if it's important to you. That's number one. And the second one is assets. And what I mean by that is protecting our parkland and balancing the budget. These are all the assets. And this is really important. We have $1.5 billion worth of parkland. And that's very important to people, that this doesn't get sold or given away. And I want to put that power back in the hands of people, just like I did in the first step of the PVE Land Preservation Act. But the other thing is understanding that budget. We need that budget to keep our police. But the other thing is, you need to know that you're not going to get a massive tax that says, unless you approve all this development, you don't get to keep your police. No, those priorities have to be set by the residents. And if they say, listen, I only have enough money in my household to do one tax for the police, then that's where the priority is. But this is where we have to engage and listen to residents, because we work for you. It's not the other way around. And things should not be shoved down your throat. And that means an engagement. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lozey?
So I agree. I'm going to stick with the communication theme, because I do feel like, sometimes just the communication piece is 90% of the battle, right? I mean, probably residents generally have confidence that whoever sits in these chairs is doing a good job, is paying attention, has their eye on the ball. But if you don't communicate to them, then how do they know? So I do think that is critical. I always tell people I still get a Daily Breeze every day, and I actually read it and I flip the pages. I know everybody else is more electronic. I think we got to bring back the newsletter, things like that. But I think that I talked about the importance of bringing in our city manager, and it's really important. We have tasked him with developing an organizational structure that delivers the services that the residents want professionally, but it's got to be a cost-effective, affordable model. I think that's an important point, and I think that, so I don't know if this is 3, this is 2.5, is for me, I want to leave with, when I came in, there was no long-range plan, we had 1-year budgets, we didn't have a capital plan, I want to leave this place, and whether it's the end of 4 years or 8 years, really leaving it better than I found it and more solid, and so that people can look at a roadmap and always be looking forward 10 years to say, here's where we're going, and here's where we're going to have to make some decisions, but here's the plan, here's the challenges, and here's what we're doing to address them.
Thank you. Mr. McGowan?
Well, I'm going to join in with my colleagues here because communication is number one, but we have to have something to communicate. And the long-range plan is something that we've been working on for the last 3-4 years, as Ms. Losi just identified. We're not completed with that yet. We need to take that long-range plan and we need to have, I'm going to call it town hall meetings, where we gather groups of people together like this and we walk you through the multitude of challenges that are in front of our community. Our community is not just faced with pension issues or risk issues of sewer backups or infrastructure items or fire mitigation or tree trimming or you name it, we've got it. And what we have to do is we have to allocate scarce resources. We've got limited revenue and we're going to have to make very difficult trade-off decisions between competing priorities. So therefore, the long-range plan married with effective communication and community interaction would be my top 2 or 3 objectives.
Great. All right. So we'll go to closing statements and we'll have 2 minutes each and we'll start from right to left. And Mr. Kemp's, you are first.
Thank you. This election brings a stark choice. The next few years require steady leadership that applies fiscally conservative principles, managing expense against the recognition that additional revenue is needed. Challenging economic realities persist. Inflation will likely continue applying pressure on salary, benefits, and contract escalation. Staff retention is key to retaining institutional knowledge. Increasing needs for fire clearance, landscape maintenance, pension UAL payments, capital, and technology improvements further stress this long-term forecast. This next council is going to need to collaborate further with our residents, prioritize the community's needs, and seek both non-taxable and taxable revenue to fully fund these requirements. Local government supports constituents by bringing representatives together in a public environment. City councils that work well together, share commonality, have mutual goals, and are in sync with the city manager and a specific work plan that matches community needs are most successful. Please recognize that experience matters. Disruption will unquestionably kick the can further down the road. I invest in the community, collaborate with residents, and make decisions based on consensus. I appreciate the community's trust, and I seek your vote. I appreciate sincerely the Beach Club for graciously hosting us this evening. I thank you all for your collaboration with me as one of your city council liaisons, and I thank you for the opportunity to continue engaging as your representative.
Thank you. Mr. McGowan?
Thank you. I sit here tonight as a neighbor who has resided in this community for over 27 years. And I have never been more disenchanted as I am regarding this election. The Palos Verde Estates is a very special community, and to witness an election that is fraught with as many misrepresentations, fabrications, slanderous statements, twisted facts, and blatant inaccurate statements is appalling to me. I encourage each of you to fully research each candidate's background, record, and accomplishments before you cast your vote. My previous commitments regarding financial vision and leadership, along with my vision for a community foundation, have been realized. Our council has demonstrated collaboration and positive progress. I believe that the incumbents are the winning our challenge and for our future. We are positive and refute the dark clouds of negativity. I believe this is what our residents want and desire. I ask you to join us to move forward with hope and civility to ensure the special character of our city remains. I'd like to also thank the Beach Club for their hospitality this evening and the opportunity to meet with you.
Thank you. Ms. Lozey?
Yes, I also thank the club and good questions, everybody who shot those in there. Those were thoughtful, good questions. I am running for re-election because I strongly feel that we need to keep experienced leadership and continuity on our city council. I am incredibly proud of the progress made during my first term. We've made great strides tackling long-term financial issues while protecting our residents and maintaining the special character of Palos Verdes Estates. I have worked hard for the residents to address our financial issues, developing the long-range financial plan, adopting a pension funding policy, initiating a 10-year capital improvement plan. But there is so much more work that we do on your behalf to make this city run as smoothly as possible. We support our community-based police department. We protect and maintain our parklands and our open space. We maintain our infrastructure, streets, sewers. We uphold our neighborhood compatibility ordinance. We protect our city from state housing mandates and legislations. We spend a lot of time thinking and planning on your behalf. The key to everything that has been accomplished has been the spirit of collaboration that is brought to the table by this group. Leadership is not about the individual. It's about bringing people together of different thought, even people who are opposed to each other. And I would say you especially want to bring people who are opposed to each other to the table. And you need to lead to solutions that work for the majority. Pointing out problems is easy. Finding solutions requires working together. It requires playing nice in the sandbox. And again, collaborating for the betterment of the community as a whole. So vote for me is a vote for experienced leadership, financial responsibility, and open communication with residents. I appreciate your confidence in me in the past, and I humbly ask you for your vote to serve for another 4 years.
Thank you so much. Ms. Myers?
The smear campaign was a distraction from promises made 4 years ago to balance the budget, increase transparency, protect our land, and rural design. Residents need leadership, not strict smear campaign. I've remained focused on the issues. We need leadership to take the high road. Last fall, I provided the council a petition of 320 signatures asking them to move forward with the PVE Land Preservation Act. They declined, so I led the preservation team and got it to getting it into law. We need to mitigate our critical issues to move forward. Abate excessive staff turnover that began in 2019 continues today. Balance the budget and secure the police in the years ahead. The city projected cash deficits begin next year. We made financial commitments in the last 4 years that are unsustainable. We must stop making commitments without first acquiring the funding. We don't run our households that way. We need to restore trust lost on financials, the roundabout, selling parkland, and now the PVE Foundation's project. Improve communications with the residents and ensure that they have a seat at the table. I will work collaboratively with the council, staff, and residents to solve our problems. Residents are our trusted partners, and they deserve full candor. I will be a voice for the residents and bring the community together to help build trust to solve our problems. Thank you for the Beach Club very much for tonight and the questions.
Great. Thank you. It's been a privilege to be the moderator tonight. And I want to thank all of you for your civility tonight, the good questions. I want to thank the Beach Club staff again, Amanda and Chris and Gina, I know is in the background, so thank you to them. And most of all, let's thank the candidates for willing to serve our community.
Good job.